Black on black and beauty's intact. Trust, there's nothing you lack. Nothing can ever sever our soul ties when we together. You my ride or die, girl. Forever, ever, forever, ever can fly in any weather. Black, intelligent, smart, and clever, full of grace and honor. How dare we ponder? Your strength make a black man's heart grow fonder. Protect our black queens at any cost. See, without the black queen, we catch a lost beat. Taking L's from left to right, vision blurred, but with the black queen we elevate, you heard? Honey, caramel, hazelnut, bronze, chocolate, milk, all shades, no cons. Skin absorbing all the sun, so much melanin. Love the color of your beauty and the light within. Concept, baby.
Concepts, you said it right. I am beautiful in God's sight. Don't you know I am Mother Earth? Everything black and beautiful I have birthed. Let's review my history. Some think it's tainted mystery. Royal blood runs through my veins. I have carried my people's pains. I am dark like a night in Tunisia. I possess power and wealth like the Queen of Sheba. Naya, Kim, Cynthia, Viola, Kadia, Zozabini, Gabrielle, Beverly, Issa, from Africa, India, America, Jamaica. Dark beauty runs across the world, make no mistake, beautiful mind and beautiful skin. The peace and power that come from within. Don't you feel the pull? We are the color of beautiful.
Image and mirroring his reflection. Black and beautiful, my shortcomings, this is perfections. Addicted to this polio and method, that's why they toil you. On the clouds, I'm in craving. Homage to my people who fight to be equal.
Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to Colorism Conversations. My name is Dr. Karen Moore. I am the founder of I Am the Color of Beautiful global spoken word initiative and movement, where we are redefining the standard of beauty for women of color. Our focus is on eradicating colorism in communities of color across the globe. I'm so glad that you have joined us today. And for those of you that will see the replay, welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. I encourage you to invite others to engage and share this broadcast with them so that we can get into this conversation about the paper bag test and the comb test. And are they obsolete? Which is a very interesting question. I'm going to say it that way. It's a very interesting question. So we're going to have a really great conversation today about the paper bag test and the comb test. And joining me is our public health advocate, my baby sister. She hates to hear me say that. Renee Moore, welcome, beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we're going to talk today about the paper bag test, and there was paper bag test, ruler test, and the comb test. So just to give you some background for those of you who may not know, the brown paper bag test was an actual test, along with the so-called ruler test, in common use in the early 1900s among upper-class Black American societies and families to determine if a Black person was sufficiently white to gain admittance or acceptance. If your skin was darker than a brown paper bag, you did not merit inclusion. Thousands of Black institutions and numerous church and civic groups all practice this discrimination. The practice has 19th century antecedents with the Blue Blood Society and has not totally died out. So I don't have a brown paper bag here. So my sister and I were talking about this prior to coming on camera. We were talking about this, and I don't have a paper bag, but I have a ruler. And I would have been excluded.
Well, I have a brown paper bag.
Mm-hmm.
According to you, I would have been included.
Right. And so my sister even wanted to argue with me about the fact that the inside of her arm
is lighter than because this
lighter than the outside of her arm, because she didn't want to accept the fact that she would have been included. So show the inside of your arm.
Well, it's not the fact that I didn't want to accept the fact. My question was, did they look at the inside of your arm, which tends to be lighter because the outside of your arm is more exposed to sun. So, I mean, most people have a delineation line. Okay, well, I have my delineation line because of pandemic, and I haven't been out in the sun. But normally, this side of your arm is darker than this side.
No, mine's the same.
And that may be because of the pandemic, because typically you do have you have that line that shows where your tan line. Now, I believe they looked at the wrist for the Blue Vein Club.
Right.
So I guess
you would have been included in that one too.
I would have been included in that one, yes.
Okay.
So
you would have been included. I would have been excluded. So we have to talk about this, because the question becomes, has that practice been, is the practice obsolete? Now, mind you, I don't think people walk around with brown paper bags or walk around holding rulers up to people anymore. We even saw that in one of the searches that we did, that it was even as far as the church door. If you were lighter than the church door, you could come in the church, please, people, into the church. But if you were darker than the church door, you could not come in to the church, which I'm not sure how they would have explained that in regard to the fact that God made all of us, and
he did not make a certain, a certain group of us to be included in church and a certain group of us to be excluded from the church. That was not his intention. I always say God, who is the master creator, who, no painter. I mean, there may have been a painter who, for whatever reason, may have made a painting that was just white or a painting that was just black. But most painters, most creatives use all the colors that are in the spectrum. And so God made us that way as master creator. He created colors all across the spectrum. So when we talk about whether or not this issue of the paper bag test is obsolete, it's obsolete in the sense that we're not holding up paper bags and rulers and putting people up against the church door. However, we are still very much judging people and their capabilities and their beauty and all of that from a sense of still where you fall in the color line, whether it be lighter than a paper bag or darker than the brown paper bag. We still psychologically and mentally, we are still making those determinations.
Oh, definitely. I think and it's gone from a manual test almost to a mental test.
Yeah.
How we just look at people and automatically put them in a certain category and apply certain stereotypes to them a lot of times based on what category they fall in. And I think that the only difference to today might be is where that delineation falls in your mind as to what is light and what is dark. And I think that may have a lot to do with the way you see yourself.
Absolutely.
Where you want to fall on that spectrum.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think also because we have to, I think that we come to the agreement that anybody who says I don't see color, that's just not true, because you do. If you can see, you see color. The issue comes as to whether or not you are willing to have a conversation with a person and determine who they are on the inside, what their character is like, which is more important than determining just based on their physical appearance, making certain determinations about people. And this is something else that we talked about, that many times we will decide that a person is a certain way just by how they walk into a room. And, the fact that, and many times we place that even on skin color. If a light-skinned woman comes into the room, many times with a certain confidence and a certain air about her, I'm not saying that in a negative way. Many times we will already, those of us who've had to deal with colorism, we will already assume certain things about her because of the experience that we've had and how we have attributed those experiences to people who many times are light skinned. And, I say also too, that we can't always assume that every interaction that we have is colorism. Just like we can't assume every negative interaction we have is racism, because it's based on having an interaction. And sometimes that interaction is not just an interaction that takes place in a moment.
Right. And it also too,
interaction that may take place across some different interactions. It's not just that interaction for that one moment, but
from a peanut color.
My husband, he's a peanut color.
But a lot of times too, it has to do with, you're, like, for instance, for me, I am not an extrovert, and I'm usually actually very shy. I'll walk into a room and I'll observe, and I won't necessarily engage in conversation because that's not my personality. But I've had people tell me, oh, I thought you were stuck up. Well, what made you think that? Because I walked into the room and I was quiet. And I often wonder if that goes back to, here comes this light-skinned woman who thinks she's too snooty to talk to anybody. No, it has nothing to do with the color of my skin and how I feel about me being better than anybody or being snooty. It has to do with the fact that I am not an extrovert.
Right.
And so now you've put on me something that's not me, because you never, but once you start to talk to me and you have a conversation with me, you realize that I'm not that person you thought I was.
Right. Right. Exactly. And I think too that it's important for us to understand the history behind colorism and the paper bag test and where all of this came to be in regard to us as African Americans. So I'm specifically speaking about slavery and African Americans in this country. And the fact that, we talk many times about Willie Lynch, the slave owner, who told his fellow slave owners that, the important thing is to divide, is to divide people and to divide your slaves based on color, based on, it was color and based on age and based on some other different things that he listed in order to keep them divided. And that way you have control over people who are divided. And so this issue of light skin being in the house and dark skin being in the field. And I mean, slaves were slaves. However, the light skinned slaves being in the house, that had a certain, it had a certain level of, you were better than those who were in the field. And so when you come up under this kind of constraint that's put on you with white people, that these are the better, we don't accept them totally, but these are the better ones than the darker ones, then that continues to perpetrate in our communities, because we continue to carry that, okay, so I'm better than the other slaves. I'm still a slave, but I'm better than the other slaves. So now I've got to continue in order to, after slavery, then now you as a light skinned, now free person, you still want to keep up with that. I'm better than you. And this is, if I'm going to succeed in this society that has so much racism in it and so much white supremacy, if I'm going to succeed in this society, then I have to continue to separate myself from the rest of the people who are still Black. They're still Black, but they're not my Black. So
Well, I think a lot of it has to do
this idea of the paper bag test. And so now these particular people in the earlier 1900s decided that, okay, so we're going to still continue to separate ourselves, because Massa let us know that we're the better ones because he let us in the house, whereas the other ones that were in the field, they're not as good. So we have to continue to separate ourselves.
Well, I don't think it's even so much, I mean, that's a part of it. But when you look at what happened just over history, so you have the lighter skinned slaves in the house, and a lot of that was because they were descendants of the white slave master. That's where that started. So now they're in the house, they're getting educated, they're getting more access to skills and trades. And in a lot of instances, those white slave masters accepted those lighter skinned slaves as their children. So they gave them advantages and privileges based on the fact that they were part white.
So
And then they were seen as more intelligent. They were seen as more civilized because they had white blood. So now you have that advantage already of being educated, of having a skill, of having access to places that they had more freedom to leave the plantation. They had more freedoms to do other things, to go start businesses. And they were light-skinned slaves we found were sold for more, which even perpetrated their value was higher. So now, as things change, and we're talking about, segregation, and you even look at the amount of free people who were dark-skinned versus the number of free people who were light-skinned, it gave them a different status. And so as things start to change, they want to keep that status, and they, unfortunately, they could kind of almost prove that they were better because I'm educated and you're not. So, and that, and proving to themselves, I guess, that, compared to you, I'm literate, you're illiterate. I have a skill. All you can do is pick cotton. I have freedoms and access to things that.
But they were educated darker people though too.
But they had to fight more to get their education, and they weren't nearly as many of them as there were of the people who were educated by their fathers, because that their thought that they're part white gives them some civility and some education advantages. So it's not only the fact that I've been told I'm better than you, but I'm almost can believe it because of what I can see as far as where I am and where you are.
Right, and they continue to be separate.
That I have and you have.
Right.
And so now we've already started out with light-skinned people because they had that education and they had the support a lot of times of their family, which was the white part of their family. They were set up in businesses. So now I've got education and I've got money. A lot of us, that's not to say that no dark-skinned people had education and money, but the majority of the light-skinned people were educated and had access to opportunities where they could make money. Now we have that. We want to keep that, and we can't keep that. So it's not only about the mindset that I'm better than you because the white man told me I'm better than you. He treated me better, and he's given me more opportunities. And now I'm taking advantage of those opportunities. Mm-hmm. And I want to keep my status because originally the census had white, mulatto, and black. And a lot of that determination was just made by looking at a person. They were supposed to go and ask about your ancestors, and people didn't have time for that. They looked at you, you looked a certain way, you were put in white or mulatto or black. Mm-hmm. And that started a whole nother issue with who falls where in the hierarchy of the systems.
Right. But I think that we still have to admit and understand that lighter skinned people felt that they wanted to still be separate. They did not want to.
Definitely. They wanted to maintain their freedom. They wanted to maintain their status.
Bag test and all this comes in because you don't belong here. We're excluding you because we have set ourselves up this way, or whoever set them up. We have set ourselves up this way. And so we do not want to include you in what we have. So, this whole idea of the paper bag test and the ruler test, we'll get to the comb test in a minute. The paper bag test and the ruler test was that we want to continue to maintain this status that we have, and we want to exclude you if you don't meet this particular criteria. You are not included in this group. So we're holding the paper bag. And it doesn't matter that still society sees all of us as black, because we got the one drop rule. You got one drop, you black.
But that one drop rule was very interesting because as far as the census was concerned, like I say, they were just looking at you. If you looked like you could pass for white, or you looked white enough, if your features weren't, outrightly African, then they would look at you and make that determination for you. They were not trying. In the very beginning, they weren't trying to figure out the one drop thing.
Right. But once they found out that you had one drop, you were black.
Yeah. But I mean, a lot of it was just based on
whatever else you want to call yourself.
But that just goes to show
you're black.
But that just goes to show how much emphasis was placed on looks.
Oh, yeah.
Because if I can look at you and I think you are something, then that's where I place you.
Right.
And that gives me a whole different attitude towards you because you are in this category, not in that category.
Right. Right.
And that even happened. I mean, as we were discussing earlier today, that's one of my pet peeves is people look at me and say, "What are you?" what does that have to do with the cost of tea in China? First of all, what am I? My always response is, well, I don't know. I'm a human being first and I'm a female second. What else do you need to know?
So you got no attitude.
Yeah, I have an attitude because, I don't know what they think I am, but, what difference does it make?
Well, it might not necessarily be, it may not be a question that anybody means to be, maybe they're just curious because they can't tell. And I think that people want to be able, I'm just saying, I'm just trying to help you out, okay? It's possible that people, they just want to know because maybe they don't want to say the wrong thing or think the wrong thing. Because, first of all, again, it comes back to accepting people as people. Because, I always say you have to be so careful nowadays because we have become such a, we become a society of many cultures and intertwined cultures. And I always say to people that just because you're around Black people, you have to be careful what you say about white people because you don't know, unless you know all of those Black people for sure, you don't know if any of those Black people are married to white people. You don't know if they have a child that's mixed.
You don't know if they're mixed.
You don't know if they're mixed. You don't know if they have a parent that is white or of another nationality.
Or Indian or Chinese
conversation because nowadays they like to use the term, which I don't particularly like the term racially ambiguous. I don't like that term just because you can't figure it out. I mean, does it mean that I'm ambiguous? But we do have to be careful because nowadays when you are in a room with someone, you don't know necessarily what their nationality is or what the combination of the many nationalities that they may possess. So you have to be very, very, very careful what you say when you are in conversation with people who sometimes even people because I mean they might have, you might know everybody or most of the people in their family. You don't know, they might have a white daughter-in-law or a white son-in-law or an Indian son. You just don't know. So then you're talking about their grandchildren, which then you can be in trouble.
Right. And so, which it's interesting because sometimes even they're not comfortable with their grandchildren. I was watching a comedian one time, and he was talking about how his mother was white, so his grandmother was white, and he used to go over there, and she would say to them, "You got to get out of the sun because you don't want to get dark." So a lot of, just because you have white relatives doesn't always mean that they're comfortable with you.
Yeah.
To that extent, as far as your color is concerned.
Right.
But we miss out on so much in life.
Oh my gosh.
So many great experiences and so much great. Mom used to always say, you can learn something from everybody, even if it's, I don't want to be like that. And we miss out on such rich, wonderful experiences by making prejudgments about people based on their color of their skin, the texture of their hair. Because I might pass the brown bag to bag test and I might pass the blue vein test, but you try that cone test, we gonna have a problem, okay? So, but what difference does it make? Because I have something to offer. You can learn something from me. I can learn something from you. It doesn't matter to me if you're light or dark, you're Indian or Jamaican or African or whatever. What matters to me is your heart.
Yes.
And as long as you respect me and I respect you, then we're missing out on so much just within our own culture.
Yes. Yes. And I know that to be true. I have, there's a sister that I'm connected with who's Muslim. And, I always say, just because you're Muslim doesn't mean that we can't connect with each other. It doesn't mean that I can't pour into your life. You can't pour into my life just because we have two different faiths. And, I I can tell you 100% sure that I'm not going to convert to Islam. I can tell you that. And I'm pretty much sure I can say 100% that she's not necessarily going to convert to Christianity. But it doesn't mean that we cannot connect as women, as human beings, respect each other's faiths, but continue to do great things in our communities and in the world if we take the time to understand each other and understand where we're coming from. She's got a beautiful spirit, a beautiful heart.
She does.
And, we're able to connect like that because we've both decided that, your faith is your faith, my faith is my faith. And just because we go to two different houses of worship, or we study from two different books, it does not mean that we cannot still relate and be kind and be, game changers in this world that we live in, and that we can be game changers together in certain things.
That's true.
So, it is about really understanding people and connecting with people on a human level, and not getting into this, light skin versus dark skin. And if you're not, it has to be, it's an issue that definitely has to be discussed. And this is why we continue to do it. And it's also, it's a mindset change. It's a mind shift change. It's coming and accepting people for who they are and understanding the beauty, because we are all made in the image of God. So, that makes us beautiful. And if we take the time to just come together and have conversations and understand who we are and what each of us brings to the table, we can get so much done in this world and get past so many of the things that are holding us back if we would take the time to shift our mindset and understand that, we're all human beings, and that there's something that you can learn from people, even if that's not the person that
I want to be
needs to be in my life.
Right. And, the thing about it is that, we really need to do an internal check, because especially we as women, we will walk into a room and size up every woman in there before anybody has even opened up their mouths. We look at the way they're dressed, the way their hair, the way they carry themselves, the way they talk, and we have made a decision about them before they even open up their mouths. And so we need to do an internal check. When we walk into a room, and if you make that decision, you need to say to yourself, why did I make that decision? What is the basis for what I just thought about that woman? And is that based in truth, or is that based in a stereotype or a judgment that's false? And am I willing to give that person a chance to show me who they are? It doesn't mean I'm going to like everybody. It doesn't mean I'm going to like everybody who's light skinned. It doesn't mean I'm going to like everybody who's dark skinned. But it doesn't have a matter to do with the external. It has to do with within here.
And it has to do too, you have to think also of, is it based on an experience I had? Because many times we carry our experiences everywhere we go. We carry our experiences. And many times, because we had a negative experience with someone who looked a certain way, we carry that with us, and we're ready to say that this person, because they look like that person and the way that person treats me, I already know how this person is going to treat me. And it requires a whole mindset shift, and it requires us to do, like you said, it requires us to do work on ourselves. We have to be willing to do the work within ourselves, to understand how we are functioning in the world, and what's the baggage that we are carrying with us everywhere we go. It takes the idea that, which many people don't want to face, the idea that it could be me.
Yeah, it could be. And the other thing that we have to be really careful of is what comes out of our mouths. Even, I always say that a lot. I told a coworker the other day, a lot of times things said in jest are truly how we feel. And especially when we're around our children, when we say these things like, team light skin, team dark skin, and, those, I don't know if they still have them anymore, but they used to have those horrible, jokes based on what color you were. We have to watch what comes out of our mouths, because not only are we exposing our children to it, but we're reinforcing it in ourselves.
Yeah.
So we really have to be very cognizant
Right.
of the words that are coming out of our mouths, and are they based on truth? Are they based on a bad experience we had? Because just because I had a bad experience with you doesn't mean that the next dark skinned person I'm going to meet is going to treat me that way.
Right.
And a lot of times we have bad experiences with people because we project our preconceived ideas
Hmm.
about them on them.
Right.
If, like I say, I walk into a room, if people think, oh, she's light skinned, so she's stuck up, you've just projected on me something that you haven't even figured out if that's true or not.
Hmm. Hmm.
Maybe I'm having a bad day. Maybe I'm shy. Maybe I'm just confident in who I am.
Yeah.
So we do have to be very careful of projecting our own insecurities and our own stereotypes and our own judgments on people before they've had the opportunity to show themselves.
Right. And so when we talk about the comb test, the idea of the comb test was whether or not they could pull a comb straight through your hair.
Woo.
Tell you about that. There's like you said, that would be an issue.
I'd have been kicked off the line for that one.
That can be an issue for Black women across the board, depending upon whether or not your hair is coarse, or we have all of our hair. Our hair is many different grades. So it's interesting though, because I remember when I was wearing my locks, and though I don't think that you can really, it depends. I don't think you can really necessarily pull a comb straight through my hair. However, when I went to get my hair locked, both times I was told that my hair was soft and fine, and I was going to have to be very, very patient with my hair locking, because it was fine, and the curl pattern in my hair was such that my hair was not going to lock easily.
Mm.
So even though, for me to now, even though, this is some extra hair, but for me even now to, sometimes get that comb through is it's a challenge. But so in order to be invited into these spaces, this whole comb test was, it would be a matter of whether or not you could pull a comb through someone's hair. And you would really have to have a certain grade of hair for that to be able to happen.
And, so I think that's where a lot of that good hair, bad hair came from, or good hair, I guess, idea. But, it's crazy because people look at my hair and say, I have good hair. Well, what does that mean? Because you really don't know what I go through to get a comb through this hair. Okay, now you can, I had to laugh because I have to start with the big tooth comb. And then I go to a little smaller tooth comb, and I've broken combs trying to get combed through my hair. So, looks can be deceiving, and what makes my hair good? What does that mean about somebody else's hair who's got a tighter curl pattern? Is that a bad thing? And you've got something that's different?
Right. So, one of the things that I always say when it comes to Black women in hair, because, we could talk for hours about Black women in hair.
Mm.
But one thing I always say about hair is that hair is a personal choice. I don't knock anybody for how they choose to wear their hair. My thing is, do you, okay? Whatever that is, I don't knock how anybody chooses to wear their hair. There's this whole thing about whether or not you want to be natural or whether you want to be fried, dyed, laid to the side, the weaves, look, whatever makes you happy, whatever makes you feel good. Hair is a very personal decision as far as I'm concerned. When I was wearing my hair locked, that was my decision. And I loved my locks.
Mm.
And when I started with shaving the sides. I cut the sides and the back. So I did a shave thing on the side and I had the locks on the top, and then I cut all of it off. And so now, but even after that, I still decide to do things that are more natural looking. That's what I like. I don't put that on anybody or say that because you choose to do a weave or whatever it is you choose to do. I think that it's a personal decision, and that everybody, as far as hair is concerned, should do what they feel comfortable with. I tend to like natural hair, but I don't put down anybody who wants to weave or wig or straight hair or whatever it is you choose to do. That's up to you. And then, we even have talked about that, many times, depending upon your job,
Mm.
that there are some people who might feel that being natural is not conducive to working in certain places in corporate America. They recently, in some states, have made it a law that you can't discriminate on someone based on their hair or a natural hairstyle. That doesn't mean that people still aren't doing it just because
Right.
they passed a law about it.
Oh, the military does it. You have to. Your hair can't. You could not wear that in the military because it has to be up off your collar. It's got to be able to fit up under the hat. And when I was getting out, they were just starting to get on us about the braids, because when you get those braids, you get all the extra hair. And I used to remember I had different size hats depending upon how I had my hair.
Uh-huh.
And if I wore braids, the hat was much bigger. But it doesn't have the right look. You've got this huge hat because you've got to get over all these
Right.
braids.
Right.
But your face doesn't really fit the hat. You know what I'm saying? You've got this, extra large hat, not because your face needs the extra large hat, but because your hair needs the extra large hat.
Right.
So
Right.
and you have to wear it a certain way. And so, the military itself, in a lot of instances, is discriminatory about Black women and their hair.
Mm.
Or any woman really, I guess, and their hair. But what's important is that you feel comfortable and you feel confident in what your hair is.
Right.
Okay, because I admire you. I would put that hairstyle on and I would look like somebody who just put on a wig, because I wouldn't be confident enough to carry that off. I'm just not a big hair person.
Yeah, and I've always been a big hair person.
But I love other people in it, but that's because they're confident, they're comfortable, and so they carry it well. You have to be comfortable enough to wear your hair a way that makes you feel confident and comfortable in who you are.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And we have to be comfortable with who we are and how we show up in the world. We have to be comfortable as women. And we have to, you have to, when you decide what that is, whatever that is for you, then you take it on and you wear it. And, we've had this discussion before about whether or not, you do makeup, whether or not you do, whatever you do with your hair, if you choose not to wear makeup, or you choose to be made up, or whatever it is, that everyone has the right to be accepted the way they choose to show up. And it comes back again to that whole idea of humanity and being caring and being loving and accepting people for who they are and how they choose to show up in the world. It's not about judging because, they don't do what you do. It's about accepting each and every one of us the way that we choose to show up
Right. Well, and that can be difficult in the workplace because
Yeah, I'm sure that it can be.
especially if you're in corporate America and you have that corporate culture
Yeah.
where, you know, certain hairstyles are going to make you look more militant or more unacceptable to whoever it is that needs to feel comfortable with the way you wear your hair, you know, so it can kind of be an impediment. But you still need to find something that okay, well, you know, maybe I can't wear my big hair during the week at work, but I can go home and put my big hair on it then. You know, you do sometimes have to make those adjustments right now while there are people who still aren't being comfortable in the workplace with that, because you do still need to show up and let them see that there's more to you than your hair. You know, it was one of my favorite songs. I think it was India Ari, I Am Not My Hair.
But it's interesting because Soledad O'Brien said, yeah, but I am my hair. She has to have, at least, you know, for her in the job that she was in,
Yeah.
you know, and I think even now, you know, on news people, there's still, even with news people and people who are doing the news and things like that, that there's still a certain look that
For news anchors. Yeah.
follows the, you know, once in a while you might find someone who's in the news industry um, who might be a little different, but for the most part,
There was
they
one.
all have a certain look.
Yeah, there was one on MSNBC. I can't remember her name, but she used to come on Sundays, I think it was, and she had braids.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. But for the most part, the anchors of the shows.
Yeah, they have that certain look.
No, I think Joy Reid.
Yeah, Joy Reid. Now, Joy Reid is more.
That's what she wants to do. Okay.
Yeah.
And I love it because, you know, you might watch her on Monday and her hair is straight, and on Tuesday she's got something different. So I love that about her. And she's a dark-skinned woman, a beautiful woman.
Yeah.
And she's wearing her hair the way she wants to wear her hair that day.
Right.
So you go, girl.
Right.
You know, she's been able to not let her hair overshadow her journalistic abilities.
Right. Right. Well, this has been great. This has been great to have this conversation about the paper bag test and the comb test, and how it's not obsolete. Well, it's obsolete in the sense that we're not physically holding up paper bags and rulers and combs to people, but we are still many times judging people on that same criteria. So, you know, as we continue to talk about colorism and address these issues of colorism, we do have to become more and more aware of how we are judging people and how we are looking at people and making certain decisions and determinations about people based on the color of their skin. Because I think as Black people, who we run the whole spectrum of color, as Black people, we don't want other people doing that to us. So we have got to stop doing it to ourselves. Yeah. And in order to do that, we've got to begin to have these conversations, and we've got to begin to say, okay, I am not going to be the person that is looking at people based on and making decisions about them based on the color of their skin. We've got to stop doing that with each other in order to also get so that other people outside of our race do not do that to us.
Right. That's true.
All right. Do you have anything else you want to say before we head on out?
No, you know, what just popped into my mind when you were talking about that is Dr. Rivers with his golden rule. It's so true. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You know, treat people the way you want to be treated, not based on the way they look or the way, you know, what tests they can pass, but look at who they are and treat them the same way that you want to be treated. You don't want to be want someone to make a judgment about you because of your appearance. Don't do it to others.
That's it. That's it. And he always says 7.8 billion people
World.
in the world.
Right.
They all are valuable.
That's
They
right.
all are valuable.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for joining us for Colorism Conversations today. We'll be back next week at 6:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please feel free to invite others to see this and to engage with us as we continue to address these issues and move forward to accepting ourselves as beautiful, all of us. So you guys have a blessed Sunday. Be blessed. Oh, follow us, please, on all of our social media. We are The Color of Beautiful on Instagram, COLOUR, because you are beautiful. On Instagram, The Color of Beautiful. On Facebook, The Color of Beautiful. On Twitter, The Color of BEAUTI, because Twitter only allows us so many characters, okay? So please follow us on all of our social media platforms. We have a lot of other things coming up that we'll be posting pretty soon. And thank you again for joining us. Have a blessed, blessed, blessed night.